You ever witness something so absurd, so entitled, that you start questioning if you're actually on a hidden camera show? That's exactly how I felt tightening the last bolt on a 6-foot privacy fence, one that cut right through the middle of the community, lakefront like a courtroom ruling, brought to life. Half the neighborhood watched from their porches in stunned silence. On the other side of the fence? Margaret, Karen's cousin, eyes wide, mouth open, frozen in disbelief as her cushy lounge, chairs and half-built tiki bar, were now stranded on the wrong side of a wall she never saw coming. But this wasn't petty. This was justice. Let me take you back. 5 years ago, I bought my dream house in Willowbrook Estates. Beautiful yard, great neighbors, and best of all, deeded access to the lake. We're talking beach, dock, clear water, fireflies at night. It was the kind of place where memories got made. My kids learned to swim there. We had bonfires, caught our first fish, watched sunsets that made you feel like life was finally slowing down. And then Karen moved in. 6 months ago, she became HOA president. And the power? Oh, it didn't just go to her head. It hijacked her entire personality. First, she banned lawn gnomes, then bird feeders, then wind chimes, because apparently tranquility now meant total silence and bland landscaping. But the real storm came when Karen's cousin Margaret rolled into town. Margaret wasn't just visiting, she moved in temporarily. And within a week, she'd transformed the shared lakefront into her personal resort. Tiki torches, surround sound speakers, lounge beds with canopy tops, a floating dock, and even a partially built jet ski ramp. I approached politely, tried to be civil, told her the space was deeded for shared use. "Margaret?" She laughed, then waved a document in my face, some half-baked easement reassignment, signed by Karen and stamped with what I later discovered was a coffee ring. She told me, word for word, if you've got a problem, take it up with the HOA. Challenge accepted. I called the county records office. Guess what? The lakefront was deeded to my property and one other neighbor. No HOA ruling could override that, especially not without a vote. And definitely not through some paper Karen made on Microsoft Word. I brought it up at the next HOA meeting. Karen's response? Pure Broadway. She screamed about new bylaw amendments, claimed she had full authority over waterfront decisions, even said anyone questioning her would be fined $500 a day. That would have been funny if my 8-year-old daughter hadn't come home crying the next morning. She tried to go for a swim. Margaret physically blocked her and said the lake was private now. That was it. I'm a contracts lawyer. This was my arena. I spent a week digging through legal documents, HOA charters, historical bylaws, and original purchase agreements. Everything Karen did, illegal. Every word of that easement, invalid. And worst of all for them, I had receipts. I sent a certified notice to both Karen and Margaret. 72 hours to remove every item from the shared property or face legal action. They didn't take me seriously. Instead, Karen came to my door in slippers and a bathrobe, Margaret in tow, and a man she introduced as their attorney. He looked like he learned the law from TikTok. They tried everything. Karen offered to waive my HOA dues. Margaret proposed a shared calendar. Their lawyer mumbled something about squatters' rights. I didn't budge. And when the 72-hour deadline passed with zero change, I made my move. Step 1, hired a licensed surveyor. He marked out the exact deed boundaries of the lakefront. Step 2, fencing. Not some tiny garden fence. A full 6-foot-tall cedar plank wall, professionally installed, perfectly aligned, splitting the lakefront clean in two. Even the dock. Right down the middle. By the time the crew started hammering, half the neighborhood had gathered with folding chairs and iced tea, like it was Sunday entertainment. Margaret came running out with her coffee. Mug. Dropped it when she saw the wall going up. Karen followed, screaming about destruction of property, trespassing, even claimed I stole her cousin's emotional tranquility. She called the cops. They saw my permits, the deed, the surveyor's report, and left. Then she called city code enforcement. Same result. She even emailed the mayor. And when that didn't work, She called an emergency HOA meeting. Big mistake. Flyers everywhere accusing me of being a menace to neighborhood unity. But instead of rallying support, she lit a match she couldn't control. That meeting was packed. A retired judge stood up and calmly dismantled every legal defense Karen had. Another neighbor, whose flowers Karen had ordered removed months ago, brought receipts showing misused HOA funds. Then Margaret's husband arrived, took one look at the fence, the chaos, his fuming wife, and just said, "We're done." He began removing all of Margaret's junk from the property right there. Karen's final attempt? A bogus executive order to have the fence torn down. But this time, even the HOA's own lawyer shut her down. He told the board that Karen had overstepped, violated bylaws, and exposed the HOA to massive liability. The vote to remove her was unanimous, and that wasn't the end. Turns out Karen had been skimming landscaping funds to overpay her brother-in-law and funding Margaret's setup with HOA money. 3 months later, Karen stood in court, charged with embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. She got probation, 300 hours of community service, and had to repay $47,000 to the HOA. And me? Most mornings I sit by the lake with a cup of coffee and a grin on my face. Because that fence, it still stands. Straight, sturdy, and completely silent on my side. If you ever had to deal with an out-of-control HOA Karen, do me a favor, hit that like button. Subscribe for more wild neighborhood stories, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is a perfectly legal fence.